Hello? Good morning. Okay, now you're awake. Before I get started, I would like to pray because I am not qualified to be up here to talk about health because I'm not a doctor. I'm just a farmer. I like to grow good food, but that's about all I know. So I'm just going to pray that the Holy Spirit will give me wisdom. Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you for the Sabbath where we can separate ourselves from the worries of life, the stresses that bog us down, and just come before you. I just pray that you would send your Holy Spirit to give me words of wisdom, that this message would not be from me, but it would be from you. And just guide and direct us all today. In Jesus' name, amen. So my sermon title is The Upside of the Downside. And the upside is, I guess I'll start with the downside. The downside is the state of our health as a nation, as a country, as a world. And the upside is that it doesn't have to be that way. So that's real quick. I got a few, and I'm not going to talk a lot about food today because I don't have time. So I'm not going to, talk about cheese and meat and a lot of things like you thought I was going to, because I'm a vegan, but I don't have an agenda. Other than, I was reading something the other day, and I wasn't searching for it, but I came across it, and it was really interesting. You know how Ellen White says, 100 years ago, that there would come a time when certain foods wouldn't be safe to eat, that we have eaten for a long time. And macaroni and cheese, I used to consume this by the box full. And I found an article by Kraft that they were talking about the enzymes that they put in cheese. And, for a long time, they used rennin as a coagulant that helps make the cheese, stiff. And they'd get that from the stomachs of cows. Exciting, right? Well, as cheese production has gone up, they can't keep up with the supply of rennin. So now they use pepsin, which comes out of pork. So a lot of the things that we are eating that we think, we're ravenous, we don't eat pork, they do have some pork products in them. So just a little food for thought. Food that was safe maybe even 10 years ago might not be safe now. So at this time, I've asked some volunteers to come forward, and I'm going to do a little quick interview here. So you know who you are. This is my panel of experts on health. And you notice they're all guys. I was biased because you get more interesting answers this way. Oh, I don't care. All right, so if you notice, I've started with, I have some 20-year-olds, some 30-year-olds, some 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, and so I started asking a few questions about health, right? So this is just kind of America in general, right? So we'll start with cholesterol. Okay, I just learned about this like 3 days ago. So most stuff I'm telling you, I've learned recently, and it's really fascinating. So, so can someone give me what's cholesterol and what's it do? Anyone?
Cholesterol is the stuff that gets in your veins and plugs it up.
Okay. Is there a plaque? Okay. All right.
Too much wrong fats, right?
Is cholesterol good or bad?
Too much wrong fats is what I understand.
There's
It clogs
good and
up
there's
your blood,
bad.
and you get stents in your heart like I have.
Okay.
There's good and bad cholesterol.
So what happens if you have more bad than good?
You get plaque in your veins and you have a heart attack or a stroke.
Okay. See, they know what's going on. All right. What about diabetes? What causes diabetes?
Well, there's two types of diabetes, right?
Uh-huh.
A and B, and there's something like that.
Okay, that's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, one you're born with, right?
Do you have type A or type B?
I don't have either one.
Okay.
But one you're born with and one you earn by bad eating habits.
Okay. Any other Seth, you're the youngest one here. Can you hand him the microphone, Randy? He works at the hospital, by the way.
I just said that to get Matt off my back. No. I think, obviously, there's two types of diabetes. There's ones that you're born with that people really struggle with, that they have to use insulin. Then there's ones that, like Drew said, that you get through eating too much rich foods throughout your life, that you kind of put upon yourself.
So if you were to reverse diabetes, what would you do? If you had diabetes, what would you do?
Obviously, you want to figure out what's causing it and eliminate that from your diet. And unfortunately, or good, diabetes is really associated with lots of sugar. So you want to try to eliminate as much rich food out of your diet as possible.
So does sugar cause diabetes?
Sure.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, I guess we're supposed to follow what the church teaches. Exercise, sunshine, fresh air, water, all of that stuff. And that's how they got this reversing diabetes programs, the way I understand. It's just the basic things we've been teaching all this time.
Yeah. All right, one more question. Is if you eat all the right things and you're stressed out at work, does it matter?
No.
No? It matters, but I mean,
Help,
can
but
you
you're
do all
still
the right
stressed
things
out.
and still be sick? Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It could very well help, though.
It could help, yes, you're right.
Yeah, I kind of feel I tell people I'm doing Romans 7 in my health life. I'm doing all the things I shouldn't be doing. I'm not doing the things I should do, and I know I should do. So therefore, now I'm having some problems that maybe I wouldn't have had if I would have been able to follow through on what I've learned.
Yeah. All right, well, that's enough questions for now. All right. Okay. Very good. All right, so the upside and the downside. Oops. They tricked me. All right, so why am I here? I have a passion for health ministry that's been growing inside of me for some time. Through this, I hope that you guys can somehow get excited about your own health and in turn somehow take that to your neighborhood, to maybe your spouse, your parents, and to be able to help them. So where do we start? I'm going to talk a little bit about the downside, kind of like we just talked about, the state of our nation. How do we get here, and kind of how bad is it? So these are the big killers, and this is from 2001. I couldn't find a recent graph. But in 2001, about 700,000 people a year die from heart disease. Cancer is 553. Stroke, then it goes on. They don't have old age on there, but I don't even know if that one really happens anymore. So about 7,000 people a year die due to medication errors in hospital. 12,000 to unnecessary surgery, 20,000 to other hospital errors, 80,000 to infections in hospitals, and about 100,000 due to effects of medications. All those added together equals about 225,000, which would be the third leading cause of death. And I'm not advocating that you don't go to the hospital, that you don't take your medications, but it is affecting us. 41% of working age Americans have medical bill problems or are currently paying them off. More than 60% of Americans go bankrupt due to medical bills. And of those, 75% had medical insurance, which is kind of scary. In 2009, during a recession, healthcare companies increased profit by 56%. So in 2009, the FDA reported 1,700 prescription drug recalls, so they had problems with them, up from 426 in 2008. So this is an interesting one. General Motors pays more annually on healthcare than on steel. And I found that interesting, but then I realized that our cars are plastic now, so it might not be that big of a deal. The number of people diagnosed with heartburn and related disorders increased by 509% between 96 and 2002. And that's with all these new drugs, flooding the market. And, do heartburn drugs take care of the problem, or do they take the pain away from the heartburn? They what? Yeah, they mask the problem. All right. This here was interesting. This is the most expensive drug in the world, as far as your medical drugs. And it was $409,000 a year. And it's for a disorder that your immune system attacks your red blood cells at night and destroys them. And it affects about 8,000 people in the US. So just imagine having to pay $409,000 a year to stay alive. It's kind of depressing. This is state obesity rates in '85, and this was 4 years after I was born, so it's not that old. The white basically didn't have any obesity or not enough to report, and then the darker it gets, the more obesity you have. This is '94, so the dark blue is like 15 to 19% are obese, and this is 2009. So in the dark red, it's greater than 30%. In the Seattle area, it's between 25 and 29% of people are obese, right? Which is 1 in 4 or 1 in 3, somewhere in there. So type 2 diabetes, it's a disease on the rise. Over half of Americans over 40 are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. All right, so basically, if you're over 40 now and you don't have diabetes or pre-diabetes, you're in the minority. All right, so just remember that if you go to the doctor, right, and he tells you that your levels are normal, maybe I don't want to be normal, right? So just keep these things in mind that normal isn't always good anymore. In 2000, 1 in 3 children born will develop type 2 diabetes, and 1 in 2 people in the minority level. Back to I just read a statistic that was saying, they've done all these studies on type 2 diabetes, and they always do them for people over age 45. So if you get type 2 diabetes after the age of 45, you're 3 times more likely to have a stroke and 4 times more likely to have a heart attack. And they did a study with people under the age of 45, which they never do because it hasn't been a problem, but now it's becoming a problem. So if you get diagnosed with type 2 diabetes after the age or before age 45, you have a 14 times higher chance of getting a stroke and a 30 times higher chance of getting a heart attack. All right? And 30 times, that's not 30%, that's like 3,000%, right? It's astronomical, especially when you consider that over 50% over age 40 have diabetes or pre-diabetes. So you guys see the problem? And this hasn't been a problem, but it's now becoming a huge problem. Diabetes is a risk factor for almost every other lifestyle-related disease. Elevated blood sugars can cause harm to every bodily system. And basically, diabetes is not diagnosed until the disease has progressed enough to cause symptoms or injury, right? So if you go to the doctor and your blood sugar doesn't meet a certain criteria, you don't have diabetes. And basically, diabetes is, like your pancreas produces insulin. So if you eat a bunch of sugar and it increases your blood sugar, the pancreas sends insulin to adjust it. And diabetes is when your pancreas can't keep it adjusted and it's so high. So then they have to start giving you drugs to, help take care of it. So when your pancreas won't perform like it should, now you have diabetes. So mitochondria, I just read about this recently and it kind of was pretty interesting. So mitochondria is like a wood stove in your body, right? You put the fuel in it and the mitochondria is what burns it, gives you the energy. And the problem is with our diet is they're high in fat. So we eat a lot of fat and it gets fat in the cells and eventually, so what happens is the insulin, right, comes and allows the fat, the glucose, whatever, to go in the cell, which burns it. Well, you get enough fat and it plugs up the hole. So the insulin comes, the glucose can't get in, right? And it just keeps circulating in your blood. It gets higher and higher. your muscles can't store anymore. So, and the prime example is the bear, right? During the spring and summer, it's eating and eating and eating. And what happens when you eat a lot of fat, a lot of calories, it'll actually turn the genes off that produce the mitochondria. So they quit producing, and they basically shut off. Just imagine if it produced more and more and more mitochondria to where it would burn everything that the bear would give it. Right? In the winter, it wouldn't have anything to live on. So our bodies are the same way. If you give it a high-fat diet, they basically shut off. They won't burn it. So just like when the bear, when it quits putting it in, it starts burning it, and it lives through the winter. Our bodies are the same way. If we quit putting it in, our furnace will kick back on. It'll clean it up. The insulin will be able to let the glucose in, and our blood sugars will start falling. So that's the mitochondria in the bear. Certain foods cause blood sugar to rise more quickly than others. And I have a picture of a pile of logs and then a pile of sticks. And basically the pile of sticks is our American diet. If you light the pile of sticks on fire, it burns super fast and it's done. And certain carbohydrates like pasta is more like a log. It takes hours to digest and burn. Whereas if you eat like a pretzel, it's like in your system like that, and your blood sugar spikes, and so it's just something to think about. Insulin. You always hear about high blood sugar, but how many of you guys have heard about high insulin? A few people, right? Is it good or bad? It's bad, right? It's very bad. High insulin helps retain sodium. So you have low levels of insulin, then you have high blood sugar. If you have way too much insulin, right, then it basically forces the glucose and everything into your muscles, and then you have low blood sugar, which you have hypoglycemia. So high insulin levels can lead to hypertension, which is high blood pressure. I just read a statistic that said 80% of people with hypertension have high blood sugar. Right? So if you lower your blood sugar, chances are your high blood pressure will follow. It increases cancer growth, especially breast cancer and colon cancer, elevated cholesterol and triglycerides, and stress. Cortisol is a function in your body that when you have like a fight or flight, it'll give you sugar, it'll give you glucose to where you can have more energy to deal with what you're dealing with. So the problem is when you have stress, it puts sugar into your body so you can think, right? Well, if you're always stressed out, it's always putting more sugar in your body, right? Which elevates the blood sugar, which elevates the insulin, which you get the point. So how do you reduce blood sugar without drugs? The biggest thing is that you can test your blood sugar, right? How many people here have had their blood sugar tested? Actually, how many people haven't had their blood sugar ever tested? I didn't have mine tested until about a week ago, and I was just kind of playing around with it, and it was interesting. But if you're diabetic or if you think you have high blood sugar, the best thing you can do is test it, right? And the point of testing isn't necessarily to see that my blood sugar is high. Right now I need to fix it and give it something else that'll lower it, right? The best thing to do is to test it and then figure out what caused it to go up, right? Right? So one way of reducing your blood sugar is exercise. Your muscles only store a certain amount of sugar, so if you exercise, you use it up, and then it requires more sugar. They say that for every minute after a meal you exercise will lower your blood sugar by 3 points. Right? So if you exercise for 10 minutes, it'll lower it 30 points. 30 minutes will lower it 90 points. So if you have problems with your blood sugar spiking, maybe you should go for a walk for half an hour, and it'll bring it back down. Water. 75% of Americans are dehydrated, right? You should be getting like this much water at least a day, depending on your size. If you're my son, then you probably shouldn't be drinking this much. But if you're my size, you should be drinking at least 8 cups of water a day. The average American drinks this, right? So I have the same amount of sugar in here. If you were to put these both in your system, which one would have a higher blood sugar? This one, right? So just by drinking more water, you can lower your blood sugar. Right? Pretty basic concept that most people don't ever think about. This here It's pretty interesting. This has 40 grams of sugar in a quarter cup. And so basically it takes 3/4 of a cup of sugar to make a quarter cup of this, right? Which, dumping this on your waffles and, you might get like 1.5 cups, 2 cups of sugar in one setting. So sleep, if you get more sleep, you're going to be less stressed, which will lower your blood sugar. And garbage control, garbage in, garbage out. Cancer, this is definitely a disease on the rise. And I learned about this a little while ago, and I found it interesting. So basically the American Cancer Society, their definition of a cancer is if you're alive after 5 years. Right? They're the only people that have a definition like that. So if you're diagnosed with cancer and you live more than 5 years, you're cured of cancer. Right? What happens if you die at year 6? Well, you're cured of cancer, but you die of cancer. So you'll hear things on the radio, right, or the news saying that cancer cure rate has gone up by 20%, right? And that they have all these new diagnostic equipment where they can detect it earlier. Well, that's good, but they're getting people, they're detecting it earlier, so they're living longer, or they're making it through that 5-year window longer, which means that the cure rate is going up. And and I'm not saying that the chemo's bad, that that they're not doing good things, but just be aware of numbers that, everyone has cancer cells in their body, but our immune system keeps them in check normally. Given the right environment, cancer will thrive, which is a high acidity, low oxygen, which go hand in hand. If you're highly acidic, then you can't retain oxygen as well. Given the right environment, cancer will die, which is really alkaline and highly oxygenated. Have you guys ever heard of heart cancer? No? Right, it's because the heart is highly oxygenated and is really alkaline because I can't remember, but anyway, it gets rid of all the acid and pumps the oxygen in. So, if we treat the rest of our bodies like our heart, then most likely our cancer rates would go down to almost nothing. Frankenfoods. I don't have a lot to say about that. I do have a lot, but I'm only going to say a couple things. Are you guys aware that they're putting animals and plants and animals and humans and cows and like Dealy, right, was the sheep that was cloned a while back. She had babies, but she only lived half the normal lifespan, and she died of basically old age type symptoms. Well, they have now, you can go to the grocery store and buy meat that is from cloned animals. You're not buying cloned animals themselves, but they can clone animals and then their offspring, they can put it in the grocery stores, and there's no labeling. They're not required to tell you. I found this one interesting. They have a spider goat, where they take spider genes and put it in a goat, and because the spider web is one of the strongest materials on Earth, so they put the spider gene in there, and then they're able to extract the spider web material from the milk, and they use it to make bulletproof vests and different things. In China, they're working on putting human genes in cows to make human cow milk. Crazy stuff. So recap, it's not cheap to be sick. We're getting sicker. Drugs aren't working. Our food system is getting more corrupt, and we aren't being told the truth always. So if you were told the truth, would you want to hear it? Yes? Yes. That's a resounding yes. I'm excited for you guys. So this is a quote from Counsels on Diet from Ellen White. It says, "It is a mistake to suppose that muscular strength depends on the use of animal food. The needs of the system can be enjoyed without its use. The grains with fruits, nuts, and vegetables contain all the nutritive properties necessary to make good blood. These elements are not so well or so fully supplied by a flesh diet. Had the use of flesh been essential to health and strength, animal food would have been included in the diet appointed man in the beginning." And I didn't put that up there to say if you're eating meat, you shouldn't be. I'm saying that, if you are eating meat and you come across something that, you find that, they're putting human genes in your meat, Well, if you decide to go to a whole foods, plant-based diet, that it will supply everything you need. Talk briefly about the 8 laws of health. This is kind of our message as a church. There's more laws, but these are the main ones: based on nutrition, exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, air, rest, and trust in God. And I look at those and I just, get refreshed thinking about them. Nutrition is the fuel of life. How much fat was in our original diet? Probably not very much, right? We need a well-balanced diet. We don't have time to go into that. But the more and more I find that life is in the simple things. Cows eat grass, and they grow to be big animals. We should eat to live, not live to eat. 25% of what we eat keeps us alive, and 75% keeps the doctors alive. So basically the goal is a low-fat, high-fiber diet. The average American eats 4,000 calories a day, and we need about 2,000. Americans on average get 15 grams of fiber a day, and the USDA recommends that for every 1,000 calories that you eat, you should get at least 14 grams of fiber. Right? So we're eating 4,000, and we're getting 15 grams of fiber. So roughly we need, if you're eating a 4,000 calorie diet, you should be getting at least 56 grams of fiber. And I can guarantee you that if you're eating 56 grams of fiber, you're not going to have room for 4,000 calories because fiber is kind of filling. Soluble fiber works like a sponge to absorb excess cholesterol and toxins within your body. And our panel here told us that cholesterol is bad, so we should probably eat more soluble fiber. Insoluble fiber is more like a scrub brush, cleans your intestinal tract and colon. So we need more fiber. So basically, this is the inside of our bodies with the American diet. It's, the good news is you can go in and clean it up. Exercise increases oxygen in the blood, which we learned that cancer doesn't like, and body tissues raises HDL, which is the good cholesterol. And basically, what I've learned is that the cholesterol is like a petroleum-based thing where it does multiple things. It helps in estrogen and testosterone. You know what I mean. So basically, the cholesterol, it'd be like having an oil refinery and semi-trucks leaving the refinery, taking oil to different places, right? Well, the good cholesterol brings it back. So you have the bad cholesterol, right, taking the fat and everything to the body. It does whatever. The good cholesterol brings it back to where it can be filtered. Well, if you have a whole bunch more trucks taking garbage out and nothing coming to clean it, then you see the problem. Exercise controls weight. It boosts mood and energy level with increased endorphins. Promotes better sleep and increased brain function. Ways to exercise, keep it simple. Do what you can do. Start with that and work up. You can smile. You can walk. You can hike. You can lift weights. You can garden, swimming, get off the couch. In the Dave Ramsey program, we learned that just by spending money, right, you're better. By not spending money, right, you're better off. Sometimes not spending money is equal to earning money, right? So sometimes just not sitting there is exercise for some people. Get creative. Try and knead 4 loaves of bread. It's not easy. You can walk to your neighbor's house and have a conversation with them instead of talking to them on Facebook. Water. Up to 60% of our body is water. Like I said, 75% of Americans are dehydrated. And coffee and pop are not water. Caffeine is a diuretic, which you have to drink quite a bit to do that. But obesity decreases the percentage of water in the body to as much as 45%. Like I said, the average American drinks 4 cups of water and 3.2 cups of coffee a day. And, I don't drink 3 cups of coffee, and I drink more than 4 cups of water. So someone's drinking more coffee for me and drinking less water. So you see the dilemma there. Drinking good water. I'm not going to talk about water other than not all water is equal. Most bottled water. I had a like if you look at an Aquafina bottle, when you buy it, it'll say from municipal sources, which basically means that they're going to the town of Monroe, tapping into their water supply, putting it in a plastic bottle, and charging us, right? So this is from a few years back, right? But the average, if you go to the store and buy a gallon of water, or bottles of water that equals to a gallon, you're paying anywhere from $1.50 to $4.80 a gallon, right? And we complain about gas prices, but we're all buying water for $4 a gallon when, just from your tap water, if you were to buy 1,000 gallons of water, roughly it would cost you $20. Sounds like a good business opportunity, right? The other thing about that, if you take water, say I was to drill a well in Washington and start producing water, as long as I sold it in Washington, I wouldn't have to get it tested. So, just, I don't know what to say, but you get the point. This is a daily water chart. I don't know if you can see, if you're 20 pounds, you should be drinking at least a cup. If you're 320 pounds, you should be drinking at least 16 cups of water a day. Like 180 pounds, you should be 8 cups of water. If you exercise and do more, you obviously need to drink more. Sunshine, it purifies, kills germs. Without it, plants will not grow. It's essential for vitamin D, which is good for bones. Sunlight decreases chance of certain kinds of cancer, promotes good sleep, and triggers our biological clock. Temperance, I found this quote, it's by me, but self-control is the fountain of life. I thought it was funny too, but if we quit eating, 3 times as much as we should, we're going to live longer. Space in moderation in all things. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? I don't know. How many of you know like when you're full? Most of the time it's skewed now, but for me, sometimes when I hear it, I still, this is tasting good, right? So the heart is deceitful. For one, our taste buds, our stomach, they're all used to over. So another thing real quick about that is, you think about, basically the stomach is like a scale, and they've done studies to where basically people eat the same weight of food all the time. So if you eat things like breakfast cereal, for an example, like Fruit Loops, right? It might have 150 calories and weigh like 5 grams. This example, right? Well, you're still going to eat the same amount, so you're going to eat tons and tons and tons to equal the weight, but you're going to get way more calories, right? Whereas beans, calories might be, 50 grams and weigh 100 grams. So try and eat things that weigh more than the calories are. And if all I focus on is eating, it's not enough, right? So if I'm a stout or staunch vegan and all I'm doing is, making sure I eat good food and I don't eat everything else, it's not enough. We need to be moderate in all things. We need to exercise. We need to trust in God. So without air, you'll die in about 3 minutes. It helps our immune system fight off disease more quickly, helps your body get rid of impurities, helps cure bacteria and viruses in the air thanks to its rich oxygen content, and polluted air cannot do this. Air and pH, I've been learning about the pH. How many of you guys know the pH scale and what it does? Cody? A few, all right? Well, I learned this on my garden this year, the hard way. It was a Christmas tree farm, and pine needles make things acidic, and a lot of my soil out there is like in a 4. Well, I guess I should explain it. pH goes from 0 to 14, 7 being neutral, and below that is acidic, and above that's alkaline. If it's too far either way, like in my garden, for example, it was too acidic, and it just binds up all the nutrients so the plants can't absorb it. Same way with our bodies. If our bodies are too acidic, and you're taking vitamins and all these things, a lot of times they aren't able to absorb it all. If your body's alkaline, you can hold 20 times the amount of oxygen, and you can attain it 1,000 times faster, right? And we learned that cancer likes acidic environments and less oxygen, right? So just by doing things that are more alkaline, make sure your water's alkaline. A lot of foods, dairies, meats, cheeses, all those things are more acidic. So maybe look at what you're eating and see if you're eating everything acidic. Like pop is really acidic. And the way the pH scale works, if you go from 7 to 6, it's 10 times greater. If you go from 7 to 5, it's 100 times greater. If you go from 7 to 4, it's 1,000 times greater. All right, so like pop is 3,000 or 1,000 times, pop is like 10,000 times more acidic than our bodies should be. So that's why it erodes. And if you take a chicken bone and put it in pop, or cola, it'll get all noodly in a few minutes. So the stomach, this is another quote. The stomach, liver, lungs, and brain are suffering for want of deep, full inspirations of air, which would electrify the blood and impart to it a bright, lively color, which alone can keep it pure and give tone and vigor to every part of the living machinery. So air is oxygen. Air is important, Rest, the average American gets 6.5 hours a night. We need more like 8. And does it matter when you sleep? Yes? For one example, cortisol, which I mentioned earlier, raises your blood sugar. Its lowest point is at midnight. And at midnight, it starts increasing. And by 6 a.m. in the morning, it's at its highest point. So if you go to bed at midnight, right, it's already starting to produce, which it does that, so it'll put more energy in your body and wake you up. So if you go to bed when it's at its lowest, you have a higher likelihood of going to sleep easier, right? So we're getting 6.5. We need more like 8. It's so important that God gave us a day of rest. It says, "It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days the Lord made the heaven and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested and he was refreshed." Right? The Sabbath is for refreshing. It's not for not being refreshed. Without sleep, you'll go crazy. Ask anyone who doesn't sleep very much. Trust in God. Do not worry about the things you shouldn't. Take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. Do we have enough to worry about? Right? Quit worrying about tomorrow. Doesn't matter if you do all the right things and fail in this one area. It can be devastating. So Satan's plan. Does Satan have a plan for us? Does he? Yes. He's after our mind, right? If he can get our mind, then he's pretty much got everything. And if you're sick and you're depressed and you're down, are you excited about God? Are you telling people about God? Or are you, when you ask people, how are you today? Well, could be better. That's not really God's plan for our life. If he can get us to distrust God, the devil has started you down the path of calamity. The sicker we get, it is easier to be separated from God. How many of you guys, like, when you get the flu, are just gung-ho about studying the Bible? I'm not. I'm just thinking about, if I can make it to the bathroom in time. So, a general principle, the healthier you are, the brighter you are, the clearer you can think, and the chances of having a relationship with God are better. The first lie was basically you will not die. And how many people do you talk to? I talk to people. I have a friend that was diagnosed, he's had diabetes and heart disease and problems forever. 3 years ago they said, you have 2 or 3 years to live. And he's still not changed anything. Our mentality is that it's not going to happen to me. I'm fine. And that's the lie that the devil wants you to think. So basically, no more excuses. We're all going to die sometime is not an excuse. You're right, you will, but the devil has a plan for us, and we're not to play around with that. Jesus told him, "Get thee behind me," when he tempted it with food. And everything that God has done is to bring us closer to him. Everything the devil does is to separate us. So this is my closing text here. It says, it's found in Matthew 10. These 12 Jesus sent forth and commanded them, saying, Go into the way of the Gentiles. Go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Who's that? That's us, right? Yet, when I think of that, I think of when you're on the airplane starts going down, the oxygen masks fall out, You're supposed to put it on yourself first, right? Well, if we do that, it's naturally going to just spread out into the community. As you go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out devils. Freely you have received, freely give. Basically, that's our job, right? And if we're not there, it's a lot harder to do that. So does it matter? Yes. All right. That's a good. Here we go again. I did the same talk last week at Startup, and they're doing a Lifestyle Matters, which is it's a health class. They have cooking, they have different things, and it's coming to Startup Church, I believe, starting in October. So if you're interested in that, there's some flyers out there. And part of this that we're doing is, I said 50% of people over 40 are diabetic or pre-diabetic, and 1 in 2 don't know that they're diabetic. So that's a problem, right? If you don't know you're sick and you keep going. So we're offering out in the foyer, we're going to take people's blood sugar and their blood pressure and their blood oxygen saturation, which is just something else to do. It's kind of fun. And if you're really low, then you have problems. So if you're interested, I would highly encourage it. Because like me, I never checked my sugar level until about a week ago. And if you go to the doctor, say a year ago, and it was fine, does that mean it's okay now? No. Yeah, and one more example is, if you sleep all night, you're resting, right, and you go to the doctor, and they take your fasting blood sugar level, does that mean you're fine? And let's say your fasting blood sugar level is fine, normal, right? Does that mean it's okay? Right? And what happens if you eat something sugary and your blood sugar goes to 300 really fast? Right? And then in an hour it goes back down to normal, and you go to the doctor and they check your blood sugar and it's fine. Right? If your blood sugar is always going up, down, up, down, up, down, that can be bad too, because high insulin can lead to high blood pressure and all these other things. So I would encourage you to do that, and hopefully we can move people through quickly. If not, you can just kind of hang around. And we're not here to diagnose you. If your blood sugar is high, it doesn't mean you have diabetes. It just means that you should check it out. You should maybe check it yourself, for a week or two and kind of see what's happening, or go see your doctor, right? So, with that, let's close in prayer. And if you guys want to join us out there to participate, we would love it. So, dear God in heaven, thank you for the Sabbath, for the rest that we can get, which is part of the 8 laws of health, Lord, and you gave that to us for a reason. Help us not to neglect it. Let's pray that today we'd be able to get out and enjoy the fresh sunshine and the air and everything that you've given us that is there to benefit us, Lord, and help us to leave this place excited about the possibilities of healthier living, and to not be a burden, but just a gift from you, Lord. Thank you again for the Sabbath and everything you've given us. In Jesus' name, amen.